I've seen video games as a great medium to tell stories. A big plus for many games I thoroughly enjoy is the story. A good narrative and characters can provide story-focused motivation that gives purpose and meaning behind your actions within the game. Which is why when I was younger and I stumbled upon Indigo Prophecy, I was really interested in this idea of taking part within an interactive narrative. This was the first game I played by Quantic Dream, and it was a thoroughly interesting tale with mystery and a lot of supernatural elements. Their follow-up was Heavy Rain, which created an interesting proposition that each of the main characters could die and their stories would interweave with each other. This idea of loss and connection made the narrative very compelling, and you felt the urgency with your situations because you wanted the characters to succeed, as you were essentially fighting for that happy ending. And when received, it felt earned. Detroit Become Human falls within the same framework of Heavy Rain, with actions and choices factoring into the narrative. Characters can die, and characters can affect each other throughout our three protagonist stories. This potentially results in a story experience that could be different for anyone based on their decisions. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you my review for Detroit Become Human. I like how the first few chapters do a good job of setting up the world, especially how the androids fit into it and how people view them. Connor works in law enforcement, Kara takes care of the home and manages the housework, and Markus is a personal caretaker. When the player starts their first level with Markus, we see many examples of the android's applications. The first instance is an android helping an elderly man. The man seems grateful and thankful that he has an android to help him.
Yes, I think that's enough for one day.
Here, let me help you.
Oh, thank you, dear.
Others take androids for granted. You see this with the runner and his android and how the runner treats him.
Hey, water.
You have run 12 miles and are 5 miles away from your goal.
Many blame the androids for taking their jobs and view them as the thing that replaced them. When Markus returns home after picking up a package for Carl, we see a great example of someone really treating the androids as an equal. Markus works for Carl, and right away you can see that respect that Carl has for Markus. While Markus is an android, there's a subtlety to his facial expressions that let the player know that Markus appreciates what Carl is saying. Carl's kindness stands out more because many of the people you encounter throughout the game do not demonstrate this kindness seen towards androids. Carl knows Markus is a machine, but feels like Markus acts and has many of the same potentials as a human. We see this when Carl asks Markus to paint something, and Carl wants Markus to paint something original and not a copy from the environment or one of Carl's own paintings.
That is a perfect copy of reality. But painting is not about replicating the world. It's about interpreting, improving on it, showing something you see.
Carl, I don't think I can do that. It's not in my program.
Go on, go. Try it. Grab that canvas. Do something for me. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. Trust me. Try to imagine something that doesn't exist, something you've never seen. Now concentrate on how it makes you feel, and let your hand drift across the canvas. God.
Depending on your choices throughout the game, Markus may turn into a peaceful or violent leader for the androids. My last comment about Carl is his small time spent with Markus is really important to the story. As I played the game my first time through, I chose to be a peaceful protester and found a way to find a common ground between androids and humans. And I'd like to think that Carl's kindness was the foundation and played a big part into this. Carl was a positive example for Markus about the good side of humanity, so when Markus was treated badly, he could remember the kindness and respect that Carl showed him and remember that not all humans act the same. But your Markus may have not been like this. You may have acted differently, and that's where we're going to get into the gameplay. The gameplay features a few different pieces that essentially form an interactive, narratively driven experience. As you play the game as your 3 different characters, you'll be making decisions that will affect the story. In some cases, too, your actions will have a positive or negative impact upon your playable characters. Your actions also affect your standing with characters and your relationships with them. Throughout the game, you'll need to manage different relationships, and they may be on opposing sides. Many times, these decisions will ask you to make that decision within a short period of time, which can create a great sense of urgency. The decisions are essentially branching paths, which creates a good amount of value by encouraging replay within the game. What helps with this replay is the game's flowchart. At the end of each level, you'll see the actions you took within a flowchart. This lets you see if there were any other ways to complete the level. The flowchart doesn't explicitly say what you need to do to get those changes, just that there's a different possibility for certain situations. I love that they added the flowchart, and this should be a standard for these interactive narrative-based games. It is a simple and easy to use tool to allow you to see what choices you've made and then what other choices are still out there to be made. When you're not in conversations or making decisions, you'll be investigating, especially with Connor's side of the story. As Connor, you'll be participating within a few crime scenes where you'll need to piece together what happened. You'll interact with objects and pieces of evidence around the area. One cool feature about Connor is how he can analyze blood samples within the field just by tasting them. You'll also experience these short moments where you need to play a part of the murder out and find a clue within that sequence. These are fun to participate in, especially because they remind me of the crime scenes from the Batman Arkham games. To break up the gameplay sections, you'll have a handful of chase and action sequences to play through. These are essentially quick-time event cutscenes. These can be rather intense to play and a joy to watch. The intensity comes from wanting to do well so that none of your characters die, as failure to hit the right buttons could result in a character dying or altering a story. One of my favorite aspects of the action encounters are these instances where you can choose a different path while in a chase, or the option to kill or spare someone. They help to spice up the action and add some more variety to the sequence. Kara's story starts out with her as a house android. She's not working within a nice home either. Even at the start, you can see this need in her to help this little girl who lives with her abusive father. Kara's emotions run high and she goes against her programming to defend and protect Alice. Kara's story brings the most emotion out of the three, and I think a big part of this is Alice. She's an innocent girl and Kara wants to do whatever she can to make sure that she can have a better life for her. I really enjoyed a darker piece of the story when the two of them are led to believe that this man is helping Android, when in fact he is wiping their memory and selling them off. This is another situation where we can see androids exploited and not treated like real people.
You deviants are so naive. They'll come to me expecting me to help them. And I just reset them, sell them on. Or I keep them for my little experiments.
No! No! I don't want to be reset! Let me go! Ah!
Oh, I forgot about the child.
The whole situation is very intense, especially when Kara and Alice are trying to escape. The situation following this one is one of the most simple and memorable parts from the game. Their car breaks down and they need to look for shelter. They find it in an abandoned amusement park. You think the situation is going to be Kara defending against these rogue androids, but instead it turns into something sweet. The park has been abandoned, and when it was open, all the androids were programmed to run it. They are excited to see a child, Alice, as part of the group, and they want to entertain her. This part is a simple and sweet part to the story. It's a well-deserved happy moment for the group.
It's the first time I've seen her smile.
She hasn't had much to smile about lately.
Kara's story is an emotional roller coaster. It was probably my favorite of the three, and I was rooting for the two of them the whole time. While Kara's story brought the emotion, Connor's brought a buddy cop dynamic with him and Hank. Hank is your washed up has-been cop and played very well by Clancy Brown.
Sumo! Attack! Good job.
If you so choose, you can see a relationship develop between the two of them. This story also brings some of the humor within the game, with conversations and their interactions being pretty funny at times. This aspect of the game is really engaging, as from the gameplay side you'll be doing all the investigations to find clues to the situation with the deviants. One in particular is where you need to find a deviant who escaped the crime scene and see where she is hiding within the building. The trick is that you have a time limit, as the android's memory is going to get wiped every 2 hours, and you only have a few minutes left. The three characters provide different views and positions for the androids. Markus is a story focused on the big picture. He wants to make an effort to fight for androids' rights and not be seen as a thing, but rather as a person. Kara is a smaller story about her efforts to rescue this little girl and get her to safety over the border. Connor is trying to solve the mystery and manage his disgruntled partner. The stories feel different from each other while also feeling part of the same world. I do think it would have been interesting to potentially play as a human and get their perspective on the situation. I have touched on it here and there within this review, but I want to dedicate some time to how much this game can change as you play it and make different decisions. The protagonist can die, which can change up the story. This results in second playthroughs showing you areas or versions of similar areas in a different way. My first playthrough resulted in me doing very poorly on the investigations with Connor. This resulted in him not continuing on and had to be decommissioned. He effectively was killed and eliminated from the story. As I progressed with my playthrough with Kara and Markus, the game would continually let me know about levels that Connor had a part to play in. I reached the end of Kara's story and she ended up dying. This was a huge gut punch and very sad ending to the story. I was mostly successful with Markus as I completed my first playthrough with him being a peaceful protester. With my second playthrough, I wanted to make different decisions and see how different the game will play out. With Markus, I ended up seeing more and different action sequences that I didn't experience upon my first playthrough. One was at the first protest, which resulted in a violent and fun battle. The ending was a final battle to rescue androids being held within camps. I felt like I could actually lose at this battle as many of my fellow androids were getting shot around me. I managed to keep Connor alive, but I didn't make the right decisions to eventually turn him deviant. This resulted in an exciting fight between him and Hank, which resulted in Hank's death. Since Connor's mission was to stop Markus, I had a fight sequence between the two of them at the end of the game where I needed to choose which character to be to then defeat the other. Since this wasn't the path I wanted for Connor, I opted to fight him as Markus. Then, with Kara's story, I made all the right decisions and managed to get Kara, Alice, and Luther all out safely. I had an exciting sequence upon my second playthrough where the cops attack the android stronghold. Markus and Kara are trying to escape, and Connor is on the hunt for Markus. It's a thrilling sequence and a low point for the androids. This is just a high-level overview of how the game can be different with different choices. The game encourages and rewards new playthroughs as you may try different decisions and see something a bit different within the story. Using the flowchart, you can return to different level checkpoints to see how the sequences may have played out differently. I do have a few flaws or things to mention that I did notice within the game. When you first play Markus's storyline, he has some pacing issues in about 2 levels. I feel like they dragged out a little bit, and one in particular that really stood out to me, that could have been shorter, is when you're searching for the secret android group and you need to get to their hideout. As you're doing this, you're finding symbols within the environment that leads you there. During my first time through this, I felt like it was just a bit too long. It didn't bother me as much on my second playthrough because I knew where the story was going. Another thing I think that might bother some people is the symbolism within the game. In many stories, it can be used effectively, especially through subtlety, but this game is about as subtle as a freight train. I noticed this at a bunch of points throughout the narrative, but I wouldn't say it hurt my experience with the game. I could see others finding this to be an issue. One sequence that really stood out to me was when you were ascending a building, and you could see this ad on the outside of the building that you would walk across that said "Rise and stand together." You're playing as Markus and you're literally rising up the building and you're trying to unite the androids together at this point. Most of the action scenes are fun to both watch and play. There is one that takes place within a warehouse that looks very stiff and not as smooth as the rest of the game. It's a small part in the game, and most of the game is full of good and well-animated action. Before I conclude my review, I have to mention the presentation. The production values are very high. The character models are detailed and animate really well, which really does sell the emotion of the world. Some of the lip animations can look a little weird at times, and like I said, one fight sequence does look a bit wooden. But other than that, the game looks great. The voice acting is very well done too. The music is another place where this game excels. A different composer was used for each of the 3 characters, and there was some nice distinction between the 3 heroes and their music that you'll hear. If you play video games for their stories and find that to be an important component of them, then play this game. Detroit Become Human is an interesting story that provides variation through its choices and 3 protagonists. You're experiencing a choose-your-own-adventure novel with high video game production values. The beginning of the game effectively builds the world, and the music helps to feed into the protagonist's characterizations. Detroit Become Human provides a compelling story about experiencing the side of the marginalized and living their journeys.
My name is Markus.
My name is Connor.
My name is Kara. I am one of them. This is our story.